Hey guys, welcome to the Anywhere podcast. This is Arch. I've got my English breakfast tea, and more importantly, I've got my guest, Lee Kemp here, who's probably the greatest wrestler you may never have heard of. Lee, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Archie. Appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get into two main things I want to cover today. The first one is who is Lee Kemp for the people who don't know. And the second is kind of the main reason why I wanted to have you on here, which is kind of your story. Exactly how we have a lot of people, especially athletes, who have this plan for their careers and things don't always go according to that plan. So how do you bounce back? How do you still find some meaning in a field or a sport that you love and kind of what that looks like? So those are some things that I'm excited to cover with you today.
Okay.
All right. So first, I'm just going to give a quick synopsis of your career here, guys. So check this out. Not only has Lee Kemp won 3 world championships, I got 1978, 1979, and then 1982 when you placed gold. And then 2 Pan American Games gold medals in 1979, 1983, and then 3 NCAA titles while you were at the University of Wisconsin, right? You're a Badger?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. We're getting that axe back in a couple of weeks here.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But why don't you kind of tell us in your own words here a little bit about your story growing up from Ohio and kind of what your careers look like?
Well, when I tell my story, I always have to start with being adopted. You know, when I was given up at birth, and I was adopted when I was 5. So I was in the foster care system in Ohio, in Cleveland. And ironically, I found my biological family when I was like 30, 36 or 37 years
Okay.
old, and met my biological dad. He was didn't really know my mom, biological mother, but I did meet him, and he since has passed away. But I had a chance to meet him, so that gave me a kind of a sense of who I am, or who I, at least where I came from.
Mhm.
But my biological mother, I still have a relationship with her today.
Okay.
Her name is Barbara, and she named me Darnell. So I was born Darnell Freeman. So
Okay.
I tease people. I say I was the Darnell before the Denzel. So, but I had an older sister named Darlene, and my mother Barbara was a teenager when she had me still. So she had 2 kids by the time she was 19 and was single, single mom type of thing. So anyway, I tell that story because uh, you know, her life was tough, as you could imagine, growing up in the inner city of Cleveland, and still kind of lives in that area sort of. But it just would have been really difficult. So I was blessed. Obviously, God blessed me to have an opportunity to just have a different path. And so I was adopted by Leroy and Jesse Kemp. So I was named after my father. So I'm Leroy Percy Kemp Jr. So it's kind of always the beginning. I always start there because I owe a lot to uh, that that divine intervention, really, that happened in my life, but other people's lives too. And I've had conversations with my biological sisters, and they tell me that uh, how tough it was. I mean, it just was a tough situation for them growing up. And anyway, my parents left the inner city of Cleveland during the 60s, during all the civil rights unrest, which is important to mention because of what's going on right now.
Right.
And in 1968, with the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, I was 12 years old then. So I was old enough to know what was going on.
Mhm.
And uh, I was an only child, or my parents that adopted me didn't have any other kids, so they adopted me. So we, as a family, we moved to Chardon, Ohio,
Okay.
which would be like Forest Lake, Minnesota, kind of a
Okay,
thing.
gotcha. Yeah.
So it'd be like going from North Minneapolis to Forest Lake, Minnesota. So it was a good thing for me. Obviously, my dad had a dream of owning having land, and he farmed it, had his regular job in Cleveland. So did my mother. She she worked in Cleveland, so they both commuted in. But I saw the vision of two black people having the desire to better their life, and it wasn't as much about uh, moving around white people that made their life
Hmm.
better. It was just, moving to a place that they thought would be better in terms of having an opportunity to. We had 25 acres of land. My dad had cows. We had pigs and chickens, and I was a real farm kid, man. I grew up
Wow.
learning how to, you know, we would be riding the pigs and stuff. Just kids stuff kids would do,
Mhm.
riding horses and so went from the concrete city jungle, whatever, of Cleveland to this farmland, really, in this rural environment. And there I learned how to do hard work because my dad was this no nonsense man from the South, and he knew how to do everything. Coming from those environments during that great migration of a lot of, well, all blacks people really coming from the South, migrating to
Mhm.
the northern cities. But the men then uh, had to do everything to survive. My dad could do almost, he could do carpentry, electrical work. He knew how to farm. He knew how to do lots of different things. So he taught me all that stuff. So when I was a kid, I learned how to work hard, from baling hay to just doing all the stuff you would do on a farm every day. So, and that introduced me to the sport of wrestling because I was in a totally different environment
Mhm.
around kids who had similar lifestyles, and they wrestling was a big thing at that school. And coming from Cleveland, all I did was play basketball in the
Right.
parks or in the cities or in the streets or whatever. So um, and I never played organized sports until I got to Chardon. So I went out for the basketball team in seventh and eighth grade and never played. I played like a total of 20 seconds in 2 years.
Oh. Oh.
And I'd like to think I was better than that, but the coaches didn't think so. And that was really a blessing because that enabled me to want to try something different when I got to high school.
Mhm.
So I went out for the wrestling team, and the rest is kind of history from what you
Yeah.
were just describing. So it changed my life to get into the sport of wrestling, and it was difficult. And as it turns out, I didn't grow very much, very tall. And as you can know, neither did my son Jordan. So
Mhm.
it would have been great for him to have wrestled actually too. He built perfect for a wrestler. But anyway, so I got into wrestling, and it just changed my life. Allowed me
Okay.
to go to college on a scholarship, and I went to the University of Wisconsin, and they had great coaches there. Our assistant coach was an Olympic silver medalist, and he had created an environment there where the athletes could go on and aspire for greatness there beyond just winning a national title.
Okay.
So my goal was to be an Olympic champion when I was there,
Okay.
and had a chance to make the Olympic team. And although our country boycotted the games in
Mhm.
1980, but had a chance to become a three-time world champion.
So, kid from Ohio ends up going to University of Wisconsin, ends up winning world championships. Obviously, there's a lot that happens in between that span of time to get you there. But before we kind of dive into more of that struggle, kind of post college and that Olympic career, just as far as a quick mental health check, I know you're in California right now.
Yes, I'm in Sacramento. Yes.
Okay.
And when everyone was talking about 2020 vision, you remember at the beginning of the year, oh, we've got 2020 vision, we got 2020. 2020 vision is not what we thought it was going to be. So, how are you, especially I know kind of East Coast, West Coast, both got hit really hard with the first surge of cases and everything. So how are you doing? How's the family doing?
The family's doing great. No, we haven't had it, so that's a good thing. Uh, I know a few people that have had it. Uh, but yeah, it's tough because of all the cancellations, which makes
Right.
sense. You have to figure out how to keep people safe. And unfortunately, Americans feel like they can't be told what to do, really. So
Right.
they continue to just do whatever they want. And so, with that being said, the Olympics, the Olympic Games should have happened already,
Right.
in
Because
Tokyo. And
got postponed to what, June of next year?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes. And right around the time that it all happened too, all sports were canceled too, like college sports.
Mm-hmm.
Athletes who had who were going to be competing in the postseason, uh, uh, whether it was basketball, wrestling, whatever, it was all postponed. So it really hurt a lot of athletes. I do
Mm-hmm.
know that the NCAA they have decided to give back another year for athletes. So my son
Okay.
actually has another year, which is a good thing.
Is this
And
Adam's a senior?
no,
Oh,
this year was his redshirt sophomore year.
oh, okay, gotcha.
It would have been his second year of competition. Last year he wrestled, as a redshirt freshman,
Mm-hmm.
and had a good season,
Okay.
but it was cut short because of the national tournament. This year and then this year they're having a season, but it's been postponed to the point where they have decided to give this season back to the athletes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So technically, you'll have 2 more years, which will be kind of an awesome thing.
Mm-hmm.
For a dad, it's cool because he gets to maybe further his education while he's has a scholarship.
Right.
Probably
And what?
he could get a master's degree while he's finishing his wrestling career at Cal Poly. He transferred
Okay.
schools too, by the
Because he
way.
was at
So
Fresno, right?
yes, and Fresno dropped the program, which
Oh, okay.
and that's what got us out here from Chicago. We were living in Chicago prior, and my son's career took him to a place in Illinois where college coaches started to notice him, and
Okay.
he got a scholarship, partial scholarship, to come to Fresno State. So California was not even on our radar. I assumed we'd be somewhere in the Midwest, and at a college there somewhere, and had the opportunity to come to Fresno with a great coach,
Wow. Okay.
Troy Steiner, who was one of Dan Gable's wrestlers um, during the 90s and early 2000s. And so we came to Fresno. And
Yeah.
so I moved because I was a single dad with him.
Okay.
And it's changed my life living in California.
You like it?
I love it here. Oh, I
Yeah.
love it
Okay.
here. Of course the weather's nice, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just different. Sometimes change is good.
Yeah.
But another real important reason why I wanted to move here is because my other two children, Jordan and Mercedes, already lived in California.
Okay. I thought
So
so. I thought so.
it just pulled us closer to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, when Adam wrestled, Jordan and Mercedes would come to Fresno. It's maybe 3 or 4 hours maybe for them to drive there. And so we were all in the stands watching Adam compete in wrestling.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's like a circle kind of coming full circle, sort of, you might say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was disappointing for a lot of athletes. I couldn't imagine me being in college and then having my dream just cut short and not
Right.
being able to compete in the national tournament. I went through it in the boycott of 1980.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have another opportunity to compete. So I'm so happy for the athletes that will get a chance this summer to compete in the Olympic Games in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Barring any outbreaks that could cause that decision to change. But even postponing your wrestling or your athletic career for a year is very difficult.
Right.
When you're at the Olympic level and you have to put everything on hold for a year. These men and women they're not young anymore, so to speak. They're not 18, 19, 20 anymore. They're 28, 29, 30, maybe 31, 32. Some of them are married, some of them are trying to get started in their careers beyond their sport. Some of them are at the top of their game, right? Peaking is important,
Mm-hmm.
where you focus to peak, and now that peak has to be moved back a year.
Right.
Some athletes have decided that just can't do it,
Okay.
and they have elected not to even try out or not, just walked away, so they're not going to even participate in next year, 2020. Obviously, most of the athletes are, because it's their chance. Like,
Yeah.
I would have been one of those athletes that would have, I would have waited as long as I would have had to wait in order to get my chance. So, but it's really difficult. It's tough. There's no other way to explain it I explain it like a death in the family, because I had it, especially with the boycott of 2020, I've been asked to speak on that quite a bit actually. And I was on that Olympic team with Edwin Moses, who was just probably the greatest hurdler of all time. 1980, Carl Lewis was on that team, Greg Louganis.
Wow.
Some of those old names that you may not remember now, because those people are like around my age now, 63, 64, 65 years old. But they came back and made the 1984 Olympic team, where I didn't make that team. I tried out and did make it. So I never had my Olympic opportunity as an athlete, but I had it as a coach. In 2008, I was the Olympic coach for the United States freestyle wrestling team in Beijing.
And something I did actually, while I was kind of researching you a little bit. So just to backtrack a little bit, for anyone watching who doesn't know, so Lee and our families go way back, I should say. Our families went to the same church in, was it St. Paul Straight Gate?
Yes.
Yeah, when we were younger. So I actually had no idea that you were even a legendary wrestler until I was about, I don't know, maybe about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago when I started seeing things on your Instagram. And I was like, wait, Mom, like Lee did all this? And she's like, oh yeah, he did. He used to be big time, So, but you, right? Because your family was just, it was every Sunday after church, either you guys would come over to our place or we go over to your place.
Yes.
And watch. I'd wrestle with your sons. Now I would lose. And you remember Jordan was always a big guy. He was always a big kid.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
So it was really interesting watching your documentary. Let me plug it for a second. Wrestled Away, the Lee Kemp story. It's available on YouTube TV. What other platforms?
It's on pretty much every digital platform except Netflix. So you can get it on Google Play, iTunes, Amazon Prime. If you just Google the name of the movie, Wrestled Away, the Lee Kemp story, it'll come up. And you can buy the DVD in various places.
Okay.
Well.
And I watched it, really great. So it kind of filled in some details. So me being 10 years old, right? All of a sudden we went from hanging out every day to I didn't see you anymore, Sundays after church. And that the movie, the documentary kind of explains some of the stuff you were going through at the time. But just as a kid, right, I had no idea. All of a sudden, because my parents were also going through a divorce.
Oh,
so all of a sudden,
I didn't know that till later. Till later.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it went from all of a sudden I'm seeing my dad all the time. I'm seeing one of my good friends' dads, and all of a sudden, like, no males in my life. And I've got 2 little brothers, so I didn't have like an older figure. And I'm gonna tell you a story. Swear to God, this is true. And I've always remembered it. So I don't know if maybe you and Linda had been trying to reconcile or something, but there was once after a string of maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks not seeing you, you came through, and both of our families went to a different church together, and we were kind of walking up, and you know how when like an older person and you're a kid, they kind of give you like a little compliment and your chest kind of puffs up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, Arch, it's good to see you, man. You're looking really big. You're looking strong. And you kind of patted my head like this. And I remember it just made my day for the rest of the evening, right? Because I hadn't had any sort of older male give me a compliment in a long time. Wow. So I've never forgot that. And even now, I'm a PE teacher. And sometimes when I see some of the younger boys in the hallway, I kind of, rub their head like that. Hey, man, how's it going? So just because I remember that was something that meant a lot to me.
Wow. I appreciate you sharing that. That's really powerful.
Yeah, it's really a little thing, because that had to have been about 15 years ago. But yeah, never, and I always told myself if I ever talk to you again, I'm going to tell you that story. So, yeah, absolutely. But going back to what we're talking about, like Olympic dreams and everything like that, you won another gold medal at the Pan American Games in 1980. Well, you won one in 79 and 83. So what was it, just physically you were starting to fall off between the 80 and 84 Olympics, or was it just being gutted after not being able to make that team? What exactly happened there?
not wanting to make any excuses because the wrestler that beat me was a great wrestler,
Mhm.
David Schultz. And there's a whole story behind his life. I mean, he was just if you Google Dave Schultz, you'll see it. He was murdered by John DuPont in 1996. You know, and in the wrestling community, that would be like Michael Jordan being murdered by, you know, just pick some famous rich person, you know,
Okay.
whoever. Um, but John DuPont was the heir to the DuPont family, and he just through a whole entanglement of stuff, ended up murdering this beloved wrestler that America had.
Oh.
But anyway, Dave Schultz was a great athlete. I beat him to make pretty much every team that I made during those earlier years,
Mhm.
78, 79. And then I beat him to make the Olympic team in 1880. And then also beat him again in 81 and 82. So, you know, I was wrestling, I was competing against him to make the team. I felt like if he could have been in the world tournament, we'd have been number one and number two in the world every year.
Okay.
Um, so after the boycott of 80, it was really tough. I mean, it was tough mentally, physically. The peaking thing I was talking about, I
Mhm.
had decided that I wanted to be finished with wrestling in 1980. I mean, there's no way I just did not want to wrestle beyond 1980. So when the boycott occurred, I knew that I would have always regretted not trying to make the 84 team. I
Okay.
mean, there are a lot of athletes that I knew personally that walked away after 80. Guys who were really good, guys who were
Mhm.
world medalists, but they knew that they didn't want to put themselves through what it was going to take the next 4 years to be ready to be an Olympic champion. They just knew that, and at the same time, um, wrestling and sports and the Olympics, you know, our president at the time decided we wouldn't go. So that decision was such a cavalier, at least we thought at the time, just to just hey, we're not going. Like it was like what? It's not like we're not going to the mall today, Dad. I mean,
Right.
now this is the Olympic Games. We're not going after 4 years of training. So knowing that that happened, it was, you know, it's always in your mind, and you're thinking, well, that could happen again, maybe. But in '84, the one thing we did know that the games were going to happen because they were going to be in Los Angeles. So, and guess who boycotted? Russia, you know, Moscow, and all their allied
Right.
nations didn't come. So knowing that as an athlete, we knew the best, at least in wrestling, uh, Russia, they're the best in the world in wrestling. So to be a world champion, you want to know that you beat a Russian to know that they were the best. I mean, if you could put it in perspective. I mean, if you wanted to be the world's fastest human being sprinter, and Usain Bolt was not going to be there for some reason, say Jamaica boycotted the games,
Hmm.
you know, you'd still go, but you know, and then you get to be a gold medalist. But what does that mean in your mind that you knew the best
Right. You didn't beat the
sprinter
top
wasn't
guy.
there?
Yeah.
So that's what it was like for wrestling. So it made it more difficult to train. I'm not
Okay.
making excuses, but you know, like if you're going through medical school and you have the boards, and then they tell you, you know what, you don't have to study as hard because you know half the stuff's not going to be on the board exam. Everyone's going to pass, no worries.
Hmm.
So I mean, would that change your your studying? I'm not saying that the Olympics was easy for everybody,
Right.
but a lot of most of the major competition was there for wrestling anyway. So it just made it more difficult. So for me, as an athlete that wanted like the purity of it all, to
Hmm.
know that I was going to be the best guy, I wanted to wrestle against the best. So it made it tough, but I still tried. I tried really hard. I knew that I would regret not having tried, so I went through the whole Olympic process, and I came up short. I got I'd beaten Dave Schultz out of wrestling 14 times in my career, and I beat him the first 9 times in a row from 1978 through 1983. Was the first time I lost to him. You know, I didn't lose to him before 1980, and then I beat him again. So I beat him 10 times.
Okay.
He only beat me once. And then the Olympic trials process is 3 matches, and he beat me all 3 matches in 1984.
Okay.
And 2 of the matches he beat me all within a matter of a 2-hour period because you wrestle an hour break and you wrestle again. So I was done after that. You know, when I had to make the team, it was like, you know, I just walked out of the gym and out of wrestling. Fortunately, during the period between 80 and 84, I went to graduate school and
Okay.
I got an MBA, and that was my way of doing something that couldn't be taken away. Because after 80, I realized, sports, was something that was obviously arbitrary in the minds of our president at the time. And I wanted to do something that was that could benefit me the rest of my life. And it did. I mean, a master's degree from the University of Wisconsin opened up a lot of doors. It kept me employed gainfully for all my life, really, and allowed me to do lots of different things. But it was different. And I guess, I mean, I got beat by the guy. And of the 3 matches, 2 matches were tie-breaking criteria, meaning the score was tied at the end of the match. And there was tie-breaking criteria. That's determined ahead of time. I knew I had lost.
Yeah.
But I lost 2 matches on tie-breaking criteria. And then the 3rd match, he beat me 4-0. So I was done.
Okay.
And then he went on to win a gold medal in the 84 games. There was a really good West German, though, that they beat to win. And then he went on to beat no Russians, no Cubans. In fact, Cuba's very tough in wrestling. All the Eastern European nations are very tough. Back then, they were called the communist bloc countries.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Like Bulgaria and East Germany and Romania. I mean, they're all very good in wrestling. Still very good in wrestling. Iran's very good in wrestling.
Really?
Iran, because they're very good in wrestling. In fact, some of the best Iranians would beat the best Russians.
Okay.
In fact, my first world championship, I beat an Iranian wrestler. It was, but Iran was out of wrestling for their own country's political problems that they've been going through and still are going through. Occasionally, like I wrestled an Iranian in this 1978 World Championships, but they didn't come to 79. And Iranian was second to, he was second in 78, 79, he wasn't there. Iran wasn't in the 80 Olympics. Then Iran was back in the 81 and 82 World Championships. And then and then I was out of wrestling after 84, so I'm not sure what was going on then. But
so a lot of people would look at just on paper everything that you've accomplished and they say, why does 1980 still bother him? But, and you can, speak a little more on this. It's almost like having everything but the one thing that you really, really wanted, And as an athlete, you're having, if that's your goal, to get that good at the sport that you're in, you have to have like that, I guess, really like a single-minded sort of dedication to that. So it's almost like nothing short of that will kind of be successful. So will you talk a little about kind of how that personally felt, how that personally kind of made you feel, and how long did it take you to move on from that?
I'll start by saying I haven't gotten over it yet, but I have moved on. Okay. So I tell people it's like a death of a loved one. You never get over it, but you have to move on.
Right.
The people that don't move on after tragedies, unfortunately, they've sacrificed their entire life around something bad that happened, and some people do that. And as an older person, I'm sure you've heard this term before. Life is short.
Right.
And it's hard to picture that when you're young, but when you get to be 63 at my age, you realize, wow, where did all the time go? And if you spend 40 years of it limiting over something bad that happened to you, then you've mortgaged your whole life over something bad. But so I have been able to move on, and I think I mentioned to you that video that actually the director of my movie put together called "I'm Still Standing."
Yes, I watched this.
Yeah, he approached me and asked and wanted to do something to kind of commemorate the boycott, or not really the boycott, but just the 2020 postponement of the Olympic Games. And so the director and I, Riley Hamlin and I, put that 2-minute piece together, and that's part of it. I'm Still Standing, that was all I could think of to say when the director asked me a question similar to what you just asked me.
Hmm.
So that 2-minute piece is pretty appropriate when you really think about it. How do you get over something? Well, the answer is sometimes you don't get over something,
Hmm.
but you have to move on. And after 40 years, if you're still standing, then you know, I guess you were successful at moving on. And that was the whole point of that piece. Uh, I'm still standing. So that's really um, how you would approach the death of someone that you loved, whether it's a child or spouse or whatever. You have to move on. You just have to, but you never really get over it. And
Okay.
I always considered myself an Olympic champion, or at least I thought of myself as an Olympic champion. I can't say consider myself because that would be delusional. Um,
Hmm.
I thought I could be an Olympic champion. It was always something that I felt I was capable of doing, and I was very motivated to do whatever it took to get there. But when it didn't happen, it was very tough. Still is, because I see other great athletes in the sport of wrestling that are stepping, into their Olympic dream,
Hmm.
and it's very cool, really. Names like Jordan Burroughs, probably
Yeah.
arguably America's great. I mean, he's he's our greatest. I don't know how to say it. I mean, there's a wrestler that won 6 world titles. Jordan is not going to. He's got 5, and if he
Hmm.
wins this, if he makes the Olympic team and wins Olympic gold, he'll have 6. And arguably, you could start to say Jordan Burroughs is our greatest American wrestler ever. You could say that if all this happens. But
Hmm.
even if it doesn't happen, man is an amazing athlete.
Yeah.
To do what he's done in the sport of wrestling has been phenomenal, actually.
So when I started playing sports, my journey was a little bit different because I was, homeschooled, as you know. So I didn't get the chance to play sports at all, growing up. But I really, really wanted to. And then when I got to college, I started going to St. Cloud State in 2013, with a lot of desire to do something athletic. But I mean, no train. You can't just walk onto any of the varsity teams. So I found club sports, and I started playing club rugby. I played the end of 2015, 2016, 2017, and then I graduated in 2018. Took a year off, and then when I met my fiance, she kind of encouraged me to start back playing. So I was planning on playing I played 2019 last year. And I just turned 24 last year, so I really felt like I was starting. We were talking about peaking. I really felt like I was starting to come into my prime, and I was getting really ready for a spring 2020 season that didn't happen. And just how much that has upset me. Obviously, it's not world change or anything, but I was putting in a lot of work over the past summer. Trying to get these skills and to make myself better, and then feeling like I'm wasting a year of my prime, really. So that's a journey for a lot of, I'd say the majority of athletes, right? Over 99% don't reach those ultimate goals that they have. So what's your advice to them as far as if they want to keep playing, they want to do something relevant in that field or that realm? What advice do you have to those people?
The thing I would say, and this is what I say to everyone when I get on the subject of trying to be motivated, trying to keep focused when it's tough, is you have to have a vision in life. It doesn't matter what it is. And there is scripture that talk about without vision the people perish, and that's so appropriate, and it's so true, because unless you have some vision, some idea of where you're going and what you want to accomplish, then you literally perish, whether it's literally or figuratively. You perish. You you're not alive if you aren't taking steps towards some type of vision. So for me, what I learned to do is to always keep something ahead of me that I was trying to accomplish. And it could be a small little goal. It could be it may seem trivial, but as long as you're taking steps that are moving you in a direction that's positive, then that's what you have to do. And I would get up in the morning when I was going through the toughest period of my life, and I would just say to myself, let's just be productive today. Find a way to be productive today. When you, because I didn't really know what I was going to do. Everything, my whole world had been turned upside down. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just would get up and try to be productive every day. And when your mind is open to opportunities that keep you being productive, God's divine will comes into play. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen. Like you said, like even from the documentary, or even just from the things that we've been talking about now, even my wrestling career, there's a lot that happened between high school to world championships, obviously.
Right.
You know, just like there's a lot that happened from my lowest point to me finally, coming out of that. But I can tell you that the steps seem small at first. And if you get discouraged in how small the steps are, and you quit taking any steps, then guess what? You don't grow at all. And I understood that, and maybe sports allowed me to understand that.
Okay.
So that's why the words "I'm still standing," that's what came into my mind. When the director and I were talking about this, he wanted me to articulate it to him first, and that was my assignment. And I wrote out all those words that are in that piece, "I'm still standing." Okay. That's just what came into my mind, and I just said it, and I wrote it down, memorized it, and when it came time to shoot that commercial, that's what I said to him, and he thought it was great. He wanted to use every bit of it. And when I go back and I hear those words now, it means something different to me every time I listen to it.
Okay.
Because if you're knocked down and you don't get back up, it's over. And you put it in any vernacular you want to put it into: boxing, wrestling, life.
Yeah.
You get knocked down. If you don't get back up, it's over. So the only thing that I could think of is I'm still standing. And I hope to still be standing 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that productivity now in kind of the later parts of your life as a coach. How did you get into that coaching role? Do you find fulfillment in that?
Absolutely. My life's gone full circle, sort of. When I was in the automobile business, when I was a car dealer, that was kind of like my goal. That was my vision. I have friends today that are car dealers, and they're doing very well. Their sons and daughters are now running the dealerships. The dads are sitting back, and they're just seeing the fruits of all their labor, And as Black people, as African Americans, one of the goals I had as a young Black male was to own a business, to have something I could pass on to my family, create some generational wealth, and all that. That was, that was where my focus was, and it just never happened for me. So, but some of my friends, in fact, this weekend I was just with a guy, I wouldn't say friend, but I meant just people that were in the car business, that were Black men that I knew that were in the automobile business. I had a chance to visit with Phil Waterford. For all the people that are kind of in the California area that know that dealership, go there and buy a car, because Phil is a great guy. He was a dealer during the time I was. His son is now running the dealership, so it just brought back all my memories of being a dealer. And this just happened just this last weekend.
Okay.
Because my son bought a car from him through that relationship. So I just saw that, and I thought, man, that's exactly the vision I have for my life. He'd been a dealer since 1997, so been a dealer over 20 years, long time, successful, had 3 boys. That's kind of what I saw for myself in my career. And when it didn't happen, I had to regroup. I didn't. So the only way to do that is you have to start to figure out what is it that you can accomplish now. And that's the whole key. What can I do now with my life? Because most of my work expertise had been taken away, and it was at a point where it had been very difficult for me to get back in the automobile business at a dealership, owning an actual automobile franchise with no capital and all the stuff that I had gone through. That was not a possibility anymore. So I had to figure out what is it that I could do to be productive now in my life.
Mhm.
And wrestling was the thing that kind of, I would think, saved me a little bit, because I realized through a friend that I still had people in the wrestling community that loved me. And maybe that sounds a little corny, but um, I realized that I still had a lot of, my reputation was still very big in the wrestling community.
Mhm.
And it was something that I left like 14 or 15 years earlier, never, not really knowing that I was going to have to, or not have to maybe, but to go back to it. And it wasn't that I had to go back to it. It was that I had such a positive experience in wrestling, and so many people saw me as this positive figure in wrestling, and it was something that gave me a lot of joy once I got back involved. And I got back into it kind of through a friend inviting me to come to the world team trials, where our world teams were selected in Las Vegas. And I went to that tournament. It was like a homecoming. I walked in the arena, and all these people were, and I felt like kind of like a celebrity, sort of,
Mhm.
and I wasn't in the sport for 14 years. And I had just kind of thought that I would never be involved in wrestling again. It wasn't something that I aspired to get back into.
Mhm.
But once I was there, I realized that I really had a lot of, um, I really had a lot to give back, I guess you could say. And that may sound a little corny too, but a lot of people will talk about wanting to give back,
Right.
whether it's financially or their time or whatever. If they had success, they want to give back. And I didn't have money at the time, so I had my skill set and my notoriety and the things that I could do to maybe help other young athletes achieve some of their goals. So in 2006, I moved out to Colorado Springs, and I became one of the coaches on our national coaching staff uh, for USA Wrestling. And it was, to me, it was unbelievable to me that they would open me back in wrestling, considering I hadn't coached at all for 14
Right.
years. So for 2006, I traveled. I went to Russia on as a coach with our USA team, and went to the World Championships as one of the coaches in 2006. The games happened to be in China, so I went to China, Guangzhou, China, and then 2007, the World Championships were in Beijing. I went there as part of our USA team, and I coached a junior team, and so I was really in coaching them, just
Yeah.
coaching some of our top American stars, and getting back in shape. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I really realized that I could change young men's lives, just like my life got changed by a mentor, by a coach. So, and plus I had the opportunity to work in business. I got to work in New York City for a Fortune 500 company in marketing. I got to work for an ad agency, and I got to be an entrepreneur as well. So I got to use a lot of business skills. So it wasn't like I didn't get to do business at all.
Right.
But now that I was in wrestling, I realized this is something I can really impact someone's life. And something else too, I had the opportunity to be around uh, a very revered Taekwondo grandmaster, I guess, and it's through a friend of mine, and he was, he was just a grandmaster in this revered sport of Taekwondo, and he was dying, and so my friend's father, actually. So I got to meet him while he was dying. He was in hospice, but he had his mental faculties. And while I was there, because of this person I knew, I saw all these grown men coming to pay their last respects to this man that they felt changed and saved them and throughout their life. He was just a person that intervened in their life and helped them through the discipline that martial arts would bring. So he spent the large part of his life teaching martial arts. And I saw these big, burly, strong-looking guys coming there, breaking down, crying, and holding this man's hands, and how much he changed their life. And I'm seeing this, and actually at the police station, when you make your one phone call, they had on the little board there this man's phone number. That's just how revered this guy was.
Wow.
And he would come, and because really, he felt the inner city was where kids needed help most.
Mm-hmm.
And he would pull kids who thought they were big and bad and tough out of the inner city and challenge them to learn the discipline of the martial arts. And these kids, these young men now embrace this. And a lot of these men went on to create their own dojos.
Okay.
So it was just paying it forward. And I saw that and I thought, man, this is pretty powerful. And I got a chance to see this, oh my gosh, probably somewhere around, 2005, 2006, 2007, somewhere in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had kind of gotten back in wrestling in a little bit, and I saw the impact that this man had on these people's lives. I thought, that's what I want to do with my life right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I already have kind of the reputation, sort of. I have people's lives that I could change and touch. And that's what I did, and I'm kind of in wrestling ever since.
Okay. And now you are coaching wrestling, helping training UFC fighters?
Yes, that's another avenue that my wrestling skills have allowed me to give back some. I'm glad I'm not presented with the opportunity to fight as a fighter, because I'm just glad that opportunity wasn't around when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a tough one, man. I don't know if I would have been a good UFC fighter or not, but wrestling is a good skill set to know if you are going to be a UFC fighter. So a lot of the fighters realize that, so they want to have wrestlers coach them in that
Mm-hmm.
little small discipline. And when I moved to Sacramento, it was because of Uriah Faber
Okay.
and Team Alpha Male. He's a National Hall of Fame UFC fighter, and he has a UFC gym here and a club called Team Alpha Male. And he allowed me an opportunity to work for him in his gym, training some of the fighters. I don't do it as much anymore, but since I've gotten here, I've had a chance to carve out some more wrestling relationships. So now I work with a lot of high school wrestlers primarily.
Okay. And then also your own son, who's a wrestler, being able to coach him, I know that's got to be pretty good, pretty special feeling, because it's not only are you helping him right with something that's going to help him academically, but also I'm sure as a father-son sort of bonding experience is something that you can kind of pass on to him.
Absolutely. At the time I was going through my divorce, and you alluded to it. I mean, it's very difficult because you're not with your children.
Right.
And there was about a 5-year period I didn't get to see my children at all. It was really difficult. And I really didn't think I have a relationship with my children, actually, to be honest with you. I didn't think it would happen. I had kind of moved on with my life, because it was so difficult to see my kids. It was just virtually impossible. So and that's kind of, I just accepted that back then. And then my younger son, Adam, my daughter, Mercedes, wanted to come live with me. And so Adam wanted to go be with, his sister, because Jordan wasn't really around that much. I was told he was older, he was 18, and he just, because of what was going on, he just stayed away. And he was old enough to do that. And in fact, he ended up staying with some other people. And so Mercedes and Adam wanted to come live with me. So they did. And when they came, it's like a miracle, really. One day I got a phone call. 2 weeks later, I'm picking them up at the airport, and with a little backpack on their back. And that was their life possessions. I mean, they were coming to live with me, and that's all they had with them. It was tough. They were struggling. And so I had a chance to be a dad in their life. It was awesome, really.
And let's say, I don't know, 50, 60 years from now, someone brings up your name. What do you hope that they say about you?
You know what? That's a great question. I've never been asked that before. But I want people to think of me as a person that overcame obstacles. And there was a quote in the wrestling room when I was at Wisconsin. It always stuck with me. I read that quote every single day. It was just up on the wall. And the quote was, "Measure a man by the obstacles it takes to discourage him." And there's other quotes that are very similar to that, like Martin Luther King made a very similar quote, very, very similar. Measure men by just by their ability to overcome obstacles in their life. I think it was something like, measure a man not where he stands in comfort and convenience, but measure a man by where he stands in controversy and conflict. So those type of things everybody goes through. So I want to be remembered as a person that was able to overcome some of the obstacles that life threw at him. And not only did he overcome them, he was able to forge new success beyond that. And I want to be a person that would be thought of as a person that was striving for success his whole life, that wanted to be productive his whole life. And not perfect, but able to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, I think. Thanks so much for taking this time to speak with me. Before we go, I know I did want to promise that, we have some time. Tell the viewers kind of some things that you're working on, or if you have any sponsorships, any things like that you'd like them to be aware of.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. There is an apparel company that has partnered with me or sponsored. They're sponsoring me as a kind of as a spokesperson, senior coach, so to speak, because I'm not an athlete any longer. Mm-hmm. It's called Constant Pressure Sports. So you can see their information just by Googling Constant Pressure Sports. They make a line of apparel, not just for wrestlers, but all sports that involve constant pressure, which is pretty cool. I kind of like that name. But I do have a book out. It's called Winning Gold, Success Secrets of a World Champion. And then, of course, my documentary, Wrestle Away the Lee Kemp Story. And I also have, for the wrestlers that listen to this, I've got a video series called Your Greatest Season. And you can find all this on my website at leekemp.com.
Okay. I'm going to drop the links to everything, the website, the book, everything, down here at the bottom. So just click on those, and like I said, I can personally speak from experience, as somebody that I know, someone that I grew up with. It was really interesting in that documentary watching Jordan cry, and that was really, I knew him well enough to know if he was faking something or not. He definitely wasn't. And it's just really good to see not only black people who have been successful, but black people who have overcome those obstacles. And I kind of measure sports documentaries by how much they make me want to go work out after I'm done watching them. And when I was listening to it in the car I was driving, just kind of put the phone down, so I was just listening to the audio, and it was making me want to curl the water bottle in the seat while I was watching it, So really, really good. I'm gonna definitely check out the book. Like I said, leave the links to everything. I told Adam already. I talked to him a couple weeks ago. I said if we're ever in, if I'm ever in California, that we'll grab lunch or something. So definitely same to you here as well. If you're ever in Minnesota, all right?
Absolutely, we'll definitely do that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time. You have a great rest of your day. Okay.
You too. Thank you.
Yep. Bye. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this episode of the Eating Where Podcast. Like I said, all the links are going to be at the bottom here. Go ahead and check them out. Check out the apparel company, the documentary, the book. If you've got any questions, please leave a comment and make sure that you subscribe to this channel. We've got more podcasts coming up, more guests, and of course more episodes for Anywhere with Ashley and Arch. The next episode we're going to be going bouldering. Talk to you guys soon.